My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Well, we're looking at the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 through the doctrine of the new creation and the new Jerusalem. Because absolutely, undeniably, resurrection brings in the new creation. Everyone admits that. So, what I've been sharing with you, we've been focused specifically on the doctrine of the New Jerusalem. In the Old Covenant, there's the doctrine of two Jerusalems. The Old Covenant physical Jerusalem, that would be done away, destroyed, and the New Jerusalem, which would be eternal. God establishing His dwelling place among men once again. With the invitation not just to one nation, but to all men of every nation could now come and to worship the true God. Well, I shared with you the parallels between Revelation, Galatians 4, Philippians 3, Hebrews chapter 12, about the two women. I don't think I developed the idea of two women, but guess what? In Galatians 4, you have the contrast between two women, Hagar, Sarah. In the book of Revelation, you have two women. You have the bride of the Lamb versus the harlot. Just on and on and on, the parallels between, Galatians and Hebrews and Philippians in the book of Revelation, which are contrasts not between Rome and the church, but between Old Covenant Jerusalem and the church. Now, I want to develop, and I'm going to try to make this brief. I mean, this is such an awesome topic. Remember, we're looking at the new creation. That includes the new heaven, new earth, and the new Jerusalem, in order to illustrate the reality that resurrection was near in the first century. In the book of Revelation, we have the prediction of the passing of the old creation. Now, it's interesting, by the way, there are two different views concerning the book of Revelation. We are told by my dispensational friends that the book of Revelation is consecutive. In other words, it's strictly chronological. It does not recapitulate the same story. Well, that second view it's the view that I take. The book of Revelation presents the same story over and over and over again. It's not strictly chronological and consecutive, but we have this snapshot, this pericope, if you please, that tells the story of the fall of the persecuting power from one perspective. Then, the scene shifts, and we are given that same narrative from a slightly different perspective. And then, the scene shifts again with the same story being told from a different perspective. Over and over and over and over again. Now let me illustrate that. In Revelation chapter 6, you have the martyrs under the altar crying out, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, do you not avenge us on those who dwell upon the earth?" White robes were given unto them, and they were told to rest for a little while until their fellow brethren, who should be slain as they were, should be fulfilled. Well, then what happens in Revelation chapter 6? Now, I'm cutting through a lot of material here for time consideration. In Revelation chapter 6, we find the answer to their prayer. Verse 12 and following. I looked and he opened the sixth seal. Behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair. The moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Wow, destruction of heaven and earth, right? I mean, you got the sun, the moon, the stars, and falling from the sky being darkened. You got every mountain and every island fleeing away. Okay? This is the vindication of the martyrs. Revelation chapter 16. Babylon is the city that had killed the prophets. Revelation 16:6. They've slain the saints. But her judgment is depicted in chapter 16 in the outpouring of the bowls of God's wrath. Now watch this. Revelation 16:19, the great city was divided into three parts. The cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon was remembered. Now, as I develop in my book, who is this Babylon, that word remembered is extremely important. It is a covenantal term. It means to bring to mind the stipulations and the mandates and the conditions of the covenant, and to bring those stipulations and conditions, whether positive or negative, to bear. Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierceness, of his wrath. Watch this. Then when? The judgment of Babylon. Then every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. Oh, wait a minute. That's what happened in chapter 6, right? So in chapter 6, you have every mountain, every island fleeing away, heaven and earth being destroyed. In chapter 16, oh, by the way, at the judgment of the persecutors. Revelation 16, at the judgment of Babylon, every island, every mountain fled away. Well, let's see. Revelation chapter 20. At the time of the great white throne judgment, at the time of the resurrection. Verse 11. I saw a great white throne and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. And there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged according to their works. What do we find? Destruction of heaven and earth. Resurrection. Oh, what do we find in chapter 21? The new heaven and the new earth. So we have the story here of the passing of heaven and earth at the vindication of the martyrs, which is exactly what chapter 20 is as well. And at the vindication of the martyrs, once again, heaven and earth passes away. But in chapter 20, into chapter 21, what do we find? The new heaven and the new earth. Now, wait a minute. You have the passing of heaven and earth at the time of the vindication of the martyrs in the destruction of Babylon. Who was Babylon? It's the city where the Lord was slain. So at the destruction of Babylon, the city where the Lord was slain, heaven and earth would pass away. You know, I'm just pretty sure that literal, physical, material heaven and earth did not pass away when Babylon, i.e. Jerusalem, the city where the Lord was slain, was destroyed in AD 70. Aren't you pretty sure of that as well? And yet, it's right here. Revelation 6, Revelation 16, Revelation 20 and 21. Vindication of the martyrs, which Jesus said all of the blood of all the martyrs, all the way back to creation, would be vindicated and judged in his generation in the judgment of Jerusalem. I mean, that's unget-overable. And in Revelation, we find that very same motif, that very same prediction. All of the blood shed on the earth, Revelation 18, 20 and 24, was to be avenged in the judgment of Babylon, the city where the Lord was slain. Now, what would take place at that time? Not only would it be the passing of heaven and earth, it would be the new creation and the new Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven. Heaven and earth passed at the judgment of Babylon. Heaven and earth passed, the resurrection took place, and the new Jerusalem came down from God out of heaven. And if you and I belong to Jesus Christ, by the way, What did Paul talk about in Romans 6 once again, as I reminded you the other day? Buried with Christ by baptism into his death, that just like Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. And if any man is in Christ, he is a new creature. He becomes part of this new creation. If any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. The old man is destroyed. We become brand new. What an incredible picture. I'll see you on the flip side.